Hi, I'm Meg. Welcome to our channel. Now, relax and let me tell you a story. Alyson Baker stood in front of the fitting room mirror at a department store in the mall, adjusting the folds of her white satin dress. Her wedding was just 3 days away, and she still hadn't found the perfect shoes. The 7th pair she'd tried on that day seemed almost right. Elegant ivory pumps with a medium heel, but she still didn't feel completely sure. At 25, Alyson was used to making decisions on her own. An orphan since she was a little girl, she was raised in a group home and, since turning 18, had lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment provided through a government housing program. She worked as a manager at a construction firm and earned enough to live well, without having to deny herself anything. And now, the wedding. Michael Lawson, a 32-year-old engineer, had won her heart about 6 months ago at a company party. Tall, elegant, with a captivating smile and attentive brown eyes, he courted her in a truly romantic way. Flowers every week, candlelit dinners, long walks along the riverfront. Michael introduced Alyson to his mother after just 1 month of dating. 2 months later, during a trip to the scenic coast of California, he knelt in the sand and asked Alyson to marry him. Veronica Lawson, a 55-year-old woman with perpetually flawless hair and elegant makeup, welcomed her future daughter-in-law warmly. She worked as a nursing tech at a community health clinic and had been widowed 5 years earlier. Veronica lived with her son in a 2-story house on the outskirts of Denver, and she readily agreed when Michael suggested the newlyweds move in with her after the wedding. "My mom's house is spacious, Alyson. There will be more than enough room for the 3 of us," he had said during a family dinner about a month ago. "And your apartment, we can just rent it out." Alyson didn't object. In fact, the idea seemed comforting. Her mother-in-law's presence might bring exactly the kind of homey atmosphere she never had in her childhood. Now, standing there in the fitting room, she mentally reviewed all the details of the big day. The dress was bought, the rings were ordered, the restaurant was booked. There would be few guests, some of her colleagues from work, Michael's friends, his mother, and an uncle. Alyson had no close relatives, which sometimes made her feel a bit melancholic, especially during important moments like this one. She took off the shoes and carefully hung the dress on the hook. She needed to decide soon whether to buy these pumps or keep looking. From the next fitting room, she heard voices. It sounded like new customers had arrived. Alyson wouldn't have paid any attention if one of the voices hadn't sounded disturbingly familiar. "Are you sure the plan will work like it always does?" It was a woman's voice, a little raspy, maybe from smoking. It was exactly like her future mother-in-law, Veronica's. "Absolutely," a man with a deep baritone voice replied. "We've already done this twice. The documents are ready. The report on her mental incapacity can be signed at any moment." Alyson froze. That was Veronica's voice, but what were they talking about? Almost instinctively, Alyson activated the audio recorder on her cell phone. "Are you sure she won't suspect anything?" the woman insisted. "My son and I just need her apartment and her money, and as for her, she goes to the asylum just as we agreed." Alyson's blood ran cold. It was definitely Veronica's voice, and they were talking about her. The young woman leaned against the fitting room wall, holding her breath. "Michael, does he remember his part?" the man asked. "Of course," Veronica replied. "My son is an excellent actor. After the wedding, he'll start putting sedatives in her food. In a month, 2 at the most, she'll start having hallucinations, strange behavior. Then we call 911. "And the apartment documents," the man added. "Michael is already earning her trust. Once they're married, it will be easy to get power of attorney to manage her assets, under the guise of renting out the apartment. And then we're all set." Alyson felt as if the floor had vanished from beneath her feet. So all that love, the flowers, the romantic walks, the whispered promises, it was all a sham. Michael and Veronica were plotting to take her apartment and have her committed to a psychiatric hospital. And what if she suspects something? Veronica's voice now sounded apprehensive. "She won't," the man said firmly. "She's an orphan. She has no one. No one to stand up for her, no one to ask questions. And I'll personally select the right medications so she won't even realize what's happening. She'll just think it's wedding stress." The two fell silent for a few seconds. Alyson heard the rustling of papers. They were looking at documents. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. "I'll see you tomorrow night at my office," the man said. "We'll finalize the details." "All right. I have to go now. Michael is waiting for me at home." Footsteps, then the sound of the fitting room door closing. Alyson remained where she was, completely still, unable to believe what she had just heard. Her hands trembled as she changed back into her clothes. A flood of thoughts crashed through her mind. What should she do? How should she act? Maybe this was all a huge misunderstanding. But no, she had recognized Veronica's voice without a shadow of a doubt, and they had mentioned Michael by name. Suddenly, so many moments from their relationship began to make sense. Michael really had proposed very quickly and had always shown an unusual interest in her finances, her apartment, and in knowing whether or not she had family. And when he found out she was alone, he even seemed relieved. "It means no one will interfere in our life together," he had said with a smile. With trembling legs, Alyson left the fitting room. The shoes now seemed completely irrelevant. The most important thing was to figure out how to protect herself, to cancel the wedding. But what if they realized she knew? What if she was wrong? No, she wasn't. Now she had 3 days to stop being the victim and become the hunter. The third link in her search led Alyson to the website of a county psychiatric hospital. The department head was Dr. Anthony Serrano, a physician with over 20 years of experience. Top credentials, according to the site. In the photo, a man of about 50, balding, with sharp eyes behind silver-rimmed glasses. Alyson stared at his face, trying to memorize every detail. That was the man who planned to have her forcibly committed. She began to search for everything she could find on him. He had graduated from a renowned state university with a master's, a doctorate, and several publications. At first glance, he was a respectable professional with an impeccable reputation. But if what she had heard in the fitting room was true, this doctor had already done this before. Twice. The sound of the front door opening interrupted her thoughts. Michael was home. She quickly closed the browser tabs and picked up a bridal magazine, pretending to be distracted. "Hey, my love," he said, kissing her cheek and sitting next to her on the couch. "How was your day? Did you find the shoes?" "Not yet," Alyson replied, trying to keep her expression neutral as she watched his every move. "I'll keep looking tomorrow. Don't worry, you'll find them. The important thing is that you're happy on our big day." An excellent actor. If she didn't know the truth, she might have actually believed in his sincerity. Alyson forced a smile. "Michael, tell me more about your mother. I realize I know so little about her." "What is there to tell?" He shrugged. "She's an ordinary woman, worked as a nursing tech her whole life, raised me alone after my dad died, never wanted to remarry, always said I was the most important thing in her life. Does she have friends, family?" Michael seemed surprised by the line of questioning. "Why this sudden interest? You're acting strange today." "Just curious. We're getting married soon. I want to get to know your family better." "She has some friends from her old job, yeah. And once in a while, a doctor friend of ours visits. Anthony, I think that's his name." Alyson's heart leaped. So that was it. They really had known each other for years. "And what does he do?" "He's a psychiatrist. Mom always said he's very good." Alyson nodded, trying to seem uninterested. She knew she couldn't raise suspicion. "Michael, have you had other serious relationships?" This time he stared at her with a look of astonishment. "Alyson, what is going on? You're different today. We've talked about this before." "We have, but only briefly. I wanted to know in more detail. What kind of baggage are you bringing into this marriage?" He stood up and went to the window. "I've had relationships, of course, but nothing serious. You're the first person I've wanted to build a life with. Alyson pressed on. And your mother? Did she approve of your old girlfriends? Enough, Alyson. His tone became harsh. What is this, an interrogation? Why don't you tell me about your exes? She approached him slowly and hugged him. I'm sorry. It must be pre-wedding nerves. I'm just worried about how your mom will receive me. He wrapped her in his arms and kissed her forehead. Silly girl. My mom adores you. She's always saying how wonderful you are. That I got so lucky with you and with your apartment. He stopped, realized what he'd said, and tried to correct himself. I mean, that I got so lucky meeting you. But it was too late. Alyson had heard and understood everything. Yes, her mother-in-law was definitely after her apartment. This wasn't paranoia. It was a premeditated plan. The rest of the evening passed with a semblance of normalcy. They watched a movie, talked about the final wedding details, but Alyson felt Michael's eyes on her, watching her more closely than usual. Maybe he was already suspicious. When he finally fell asleep, she lay with her eyes wide open in the dark, formulating a plan. She had to act fast, and she had to be smart. She had to gather proof in a way that wouldn't arouse suspicion. She had 2 days left, 48 hours, to turn the hunters into the prey. The next morning, Alyson woke up before Michael. While he was in the shower, she searched online for private investigators in the city. She chose one that specialized in family investigations. Fact finders, this is Leo. A man's voice answered on the other end of the line. Good morning. I need help with a sensitive matter. Can we meet today? Of course, these things are better in person. How about 2 p.m.? That's perfect. Alyson hung up the phone just as Michael came out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel. Who was that? The hairstylist. I booked my appointment for tomorrow, she lied without hesitation. Great. I'm going to meet my mom today. We're going to sort out the last details for the party. Can I come with you? No need, Michael answered quickly. We're just dealing with boring stuff, logistics. It's better if you focus on yourself. The bride has to be beautiful. Another red flag. Why didn't he want her to come along? After breakfast, Michael left for work, and Alyson was alone. The first thing she did was call the community health clinic where Veronica claimed to work. Excuse me, does a nursing tech named Veronica Lawson still work there? Yes, she does. Who's calling? I'm her niece. I wanted to stop by to drop something off for her. She's here until noon today. 2nd floor, triage room. Confirmation. Her mother-in-law really was a nursing tech, but that alone didn't prove her involvement in the scam, though it was enough to explain how she knew a psychiatrist. At 1:30 p.m., Alyson arrived at the detective agency. It was a small office in a discreet commercial building with a small plaque on the door. Leo Vance, private investigator. The man who greeted her was sturdy, with grey eyes, a friendly demeanour, and a watchful gaze. Please, have a seat, he said, gesturing to the chair in front of him. Tell me everything. Alyson recounted the entire story in detail, from when she met Michael to the conversation she'd overheard in the fitting room. Leo listened without interrupting, taking notes. That's a powerful story, but unfortunately, it's not unique, he said when she finished. Scams involving forced institutionalization to seize assets are more common than you'd think. So this really happens? It happens especially when the victim is alone and the scammers have access to healthcare professionals. So what do we do? We have to investigate your fiancé and his mother's past. If this scheme is real, they'll have left a trail. I also need to understand the connection between them and this psychiatrist, Anthony Serrano. How long will that take? With full dedication, 1 or 2 days. But there's a problem. Your wedding is tomorrow. Alyson thought for a moment. She could make up an excuse to postpone the ceremony, but that would raise suspicion, and the scammers might flee. Proving anything after that would be nearly impossible. The wedding is going to happen, she decided, but by then, we need concrete proof. Risky, the detective said, shaking his head, but effective. If they believe the plan is working, they'll let their guard down. Exactly, and that's when we move in. Leo smiled. I like the way you think, but I'm going to need your help. What do you need? I need to get inside the Lawson house, see what I can find. Contracts, papers, records, anything incriminating. I can get them out of the house for a few hours. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to the salon. I can suggest that Michael and his mother pick up the wedding cake and stop by the liquor store to get the champagne. Perfect. Let me know the time and give me a key. I'll go in with minimal equipment. And one more important thing, be very careful. If these people are professional con artists, they won't stop at anything. I understand, Alyson replied, and my payment only after the case is solved. If we confirm everything, I'll charge my standard rate. Otherwise, I work for free. It was a level of honesty that inspired confidence. Alyson shook the detective's hand, gave him the copy of the house key Michael had given her as his future wife, and left. On the way home, she stopped at an electronics store and bought a simple burner phone just to communicate with Leo. If the scammers were truly professionals, her main number could be monitored. When she got home, Michael was waiting for her with a bouquet of white roses. How was your day, my love? I missed you. It was good, she replied, smelling the flowers. Tomorrow is going to be unforgettable, Michael said. Can I ask you a favor? Of course. Tomorrow morning I have my salon appointment and I was hoping you and your mother could go pick up the cake. I thought it would be symbolic, mother and son taking care of one of the sweetest details of the wedding. Deal? What time? 11 a.m., and if you can, maybe you could grab the champagne too, just in case our order doesn't arrive on time. Good idea, you can count on us to handle everything. It was set. The detective would have at least 3 hours to work. Now, Alyson just needed to keep up appearances. She still had to pretend to be the blushing bride. But inside, she was more resolute than ever. The following hours were spent in a tense charade. Leo explained exactly what he would look for in the house. Documents, objects that could prove the scam, bank records, handwritten plans. He also taught her how to avoid leaving a trail and arranged emergency signals in case something went wrong. That evening, Michael was the perfect fiancé. He told funny stories from his childhood and college days. Alyson smiled and laughed at all the right moments, but inside, her stomach was in knots. How could he fake it so well? It was unbelievable. Before bed, Michael hugged her tenderly. Tomorrow, you'll be my wife, he whispered. I've been waiting for this moment so anxiously. Me too, Alyson lied, wondering how much longer she would have to endure this. It was a long night. She barely slept, mentally reviewing every detail of the plan. She would only get one chance, and she couldn't afford to make a mistake. On the morning of the wedding, Alyson woke up with a single certainty. She was going to see this through to the end. Michael was already in the kitchen making breakfast. Good morning to the most beautiful bride in the world, he said with a wide grin. Sleep well? Perfectly, she replied. In reality, her night had been filled with nightmares. Did my mom call yet? She wants to know what time we're picking up the cake. I already told her. 11 a.m., Acacia Avenue, number 123, remember? Right. And you, what time are you going to the salon? 10:30. I'm getting my nails, hair, and makeup done. I'll be back around 3 p.m. Excellent. When you get back, everything will be ready. After breakfast, Michael left. Alyson was alone and immediately called Leo on the burner phone. Leo, the plan is in motion. They're leaving at 11 to get the cake and champagne. You have at least 3 hours. Understood. I have the address. I'm getting everything ready. And about the investigation, we already have some important discoveries. Michael's full name is Michael Lawson, just like you said. He's had 2 registered marriages in the last 5 years. Alyson felt a chill run down her spine. 2 marriages? But he told me I was the first. First wife, Eliana Carter, 30 years old. She was a widow before marrying him, owned a 2-bedroom condo downtown. According to the records, she was declared mentally incompetent. Divorce by judicial interdiction. The second, Olga Ramirez, 28. They married a year after his separation from Eliana. Same scheme, divorce due to the wife's alleged mental incapacity. And what happened to them? Eliana has been committed to a psychiatric clinic for 4 years. Diagnosis, schizophrenia. No foreseeable release date. Olga, same thing. Same clinic, same diagnosis. And both lost ownership of their properties. Alyson's hands were shaking. My God, so there are already other victims? It certainly looks that way, and the most disturbing part, the doctor responsible for both of them is the same man, Anthony Serrano. We have to save those women. We will, but first, we have to prove everything. We need documents, recordings, any proof that links the Lawsons to Serrano. That's why getting into that house is crucial. I'm with you. Be careful and stay in touch. She hung up and took a deep breath. What had once seemed like paranoia was now a reality, and it was far worse than she had imagined. These criminals had already destroyed lives. At 10:30, Alyson got ready and left the house as if she were going to the salon. She did, in fact, stop by one, where she got the quickest manicure of her life, just to maintain the cover story. Then she drove to Veronica's house, where she and Michael lived. She parked discreetly a block away and watched. At 11:05, the two of them walked out the front door, got into their car and drove away. She immediately sent a text on the burner phone. The coast is clear. All she could do now was wait and pray that Leo would find the proof they needed. With Eliana, they had to change the plan a bit, Leo explained, flipping through one of the folders he found at the Lawsons' house. She started to get suspicious, even talked to neighbors about her husband's behavior, so they rushed everything to stop her from investigating. And with Olga, they were more careful, Leo continued. They slowly isolated her from her friends and colleagues, convinced her to quit her job. By the time she was committed, she had almost no social ties left. She was vulnerable and invisible. Alyson turned to the next page in the report and saw her own photo. This folder was a dossier on her. They had everything prepared. They had studied her life in meticulous detail. Her salary, her apartment, her bank transactions, her social circle, or rather, the lack of it. How did they get my bank statements? Alyson asked, horrified. Does Michael have access to your documents? I only left a pay stub on the table once, but that's it. Then they have a contact inside a bank. This is an organized crime ring, Leo stated, pulling another document from the folder. Look at this. Michael and Veronica are the enforcers. The mastermind behind it all is Dr. Anthony Serrano. And there are accomplices, a banker, a notary, and an employee at the county clerk's office. It's practically a syndicate. Exactly. And look at this calendar of notes. Here are the future plans for you. Alyson leaned in to look. Right after the ceremony, the plan was to take a short honeymoon trip. During that trip, they would start slowly administering drugs. Upon their return, they would stage a breakdown. You would have an emotional collapse in public. They'd call the paramedics, and you'd be committed. Next would come the legal proceedings to have you declared incompetent, the divorce, and the sale of the apartment. It's a ready-made script, Alyson murmured, furious, and the money would be divided among the members of the ring, a percentage for each. She clenched her fists, containing her rage. And the women, the previous victims, are they still trapped in hospitals, drugged? Yes, the medications keep the symptoms active. There's no release date in sight. This is murder, slow, but it's murder. We have to act now, Leo. I agree, and we have enough evidence. But the big question now is, how do we expose them? Alyson looked at her watch. There were just over 4 hours until the wedding ceremony. We could cancel everything and run to the police station, Leo suggested. No, if we do that, they'll know they've been discovered. They could destroy evidence, and the victims will remain forgotten in that hospital. No, we have to catch them red-handed. You want to go through with the wedding? Yes, we'll let them think the plan is working. And at City Hall, in front of everyone, we'll reveal everything. The detective nodded slowly. It's risky. What if they get suspicious before then? They won't. I'll maintain my composure. I can be a good actress when I need to be. Then I'll use the next 2 hours to coordinate everything with the police and get the official documents ready. We'll need backup and everything needs to be perfect. Can you do it? I can, but what about you? I can too. They shook hands firmly. The hardest part was yet to come, spending the next few hours by the side of these criminals, pretending she knew nothing. Back at her apartment, Alyson was greeted by a radiant Michael, holding a bouquet of fresh peonies. How is my gorgeous bride? Good, she said, smiling at the flowers. The hairdo looks nice. You look beautiful, a true dream. I'm the happiest man in the world. And the cake? A work of art. My mom loved it. We also got the champagne and some extra flowers for the hall. And Veronica is getting ready at her house. She's nervous, keeps saying that today she's finally getting a daughter. If only she knew what kind of daughter she was about to get. Michael, I'm going to lie down for a bit. I need to rest before the ceremony. Of course, my love. I'll take this time to put our documents in the car. Can't forget those. In the bedroom, Alyson lay down and took a deep breath. She needed to review the plan in her mind one last time. The ceremony was close, and with it, the chance to unmask this whole charade. The wedding dress hung on the door, shimmering elegantly. The shoes, not the ones she wanted, were chosen from a pair she already owned and were good enough. Michael paced around the house, checking the guest list, making calls to the caterer. Love, my mom asked if she needs to bring a camera. Why? We hired a professional photographer. She wants to take some family photos for her personal album. Or for the syndicate's album of victims, Alyson thought, but she replied nonchalantly, she can bring one if she wants. At the appointed time, the wedding car arrived. It was decorated with flowers, driven by a uniformed chauffeur who helped Alyson get in carefully so as not to wrinkle her dress. You look breathtaking, Michael said, sliding in beside her. I'm the luckiest man alive. Me too, Alyson replied, wondering how many times he had said those exact words. On the way to City Hall, he talked about their honeymoon, their future plans. Alyson smiled and nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. Had Leo managed to get everything ready in time? What are you talking about? Michael tried to maintain his composure with a tense smile. I'm talking about your plans, Alyson replied firmly, taking her phone out of her purse, about how you and your mother planned to have me committed to a psychiatric hospital and sell my apartment. You're insane, Michael shouted, jumping up from his chair, visibly agitated. Insane. Alyson then activated the speakerphone. From the recording came Veronica's clear voice. Of course she won't suspect anything. My son and I just want her apartment and her money. And as for her, she goes to the asylum, just as we agreed. Veronica, who was on the other side of the room, clutched her chest as if she were having a heart attack. Michael looked around desperately, searching for an exit. This must be a mistake. That recording is fake, he stammered. Alyson let out a short, cold laugh. And what about your ex-wives, Eliana Carter and Olga Ramirez? Both institutionalized, declared incompetent, stripped of their own freedom. The same pattern, the same doctor. Have you no shame? The guests began to murmur. Some stood up, while others were already pulling out their phones to record. I don't know what you're talking about, Michael said, trying to hold his ground. This is a setup. At that moment, Leo Vance stood up from the back of the room. And what do you say about these documents? He opened a folder packed with papers, printouts, copies of emails, lists, and bank statements, all organized, all proving the criminal scheme. Here are the syndicate's plans, detailed, the detective announced. Drugging schedules, false documents, names of accomplices, financial transactions, it's all here, with proof. Michael and Veronica looked at each other. Veronica began to walk discreetly toward the exit, but two men in suits intercepted her. "Police," one of them said, flashing his badge. "Nobody leaves." "And the mastermind of the operation?" Alyson asked loudly. "Where is Anthony Serrano?" As if on cue, the doors to the room swung open and 3 police officers entered, escorting an older man with silver-rimmed glasses, exactly like the photo from the hospital website. "There's the doctor," Alyson declared with a mixture of disgust and relief. "Now the group is complete." Michael tried to run, but was immediately subdued. Veronica started crying, muttering disconnected phrases. "Mr. Michael Lawson, Mrs. Veronica Lawson, and Dr. Anthony Serrano, you are under arrest on suspicion of fraud, forgery, criminal conspiracy, and unlawful imprisonment," the lead detective announced. The room erupted in shock. Guests were filming. Others were trying to understand what had just happened. The detective continued. "This group has been under investigation for months for running the same scam on vulnerable women. We have 2 confirmed victims. Fortunately, this third one was able to fight back in time." Alyson looked directly at Veronica, who was now being led away in handcuffs. "You know, Veronica, I really did want to be a part of your family. It's a shame you never truly wanted that." Michael said nothing, just lowered his head in defeat. Dr. Serrano, cold and silent, seemed more bothered by the camera flashes than by his arrest. Alyson turned to Leo with tears in her eyes. "Now we can get the other victims out of the hospital, right?" "Yes," he said, holding up the folder of documents. "And with all of this, they will walk out free." Alyson didn't get married that day, but she left City Hall with something worth much more than a husband: freedom, justice, and peace. A few days later, Alyson arrived at the county psychiatric hospital, accompanied by Leo. The new clinical director, Dr. Ramos, who had replaced the now imprisoned Dr. Serrano, met them. "I want to warn you," the doctor said, as they walked down a long corridor. "The patient's conditions are still unstable. We've begun the detoxification process, but they've both been through immense suffering. The trauma is deep." When they met Eliana and Olga, Alyson saw the profound toll the ordeal had taken, but she also saw a flicker of hope. In the weeks that followed, Alyson, with the help of lawyers, dedicated herself to their cause. The DA's office had accepted the case, and with the mountain of evidence, a judge authorized the reopening of the competency cases for both women. One day, Eliana asked her, "Why are you doing all this, Alyson? Why spend your time and money on 2 strangers?" Alyson thought for a moment before answering. "You know, I spent my whole life alone. I grew up in group homes, then moved into a small apartment I worked hard for. When I met Michael, I thought I was finally building a family, but it was all a lie. And now I understand. Real family are the people who support each other through the hardest times." Eliana smiled, her eyes welling with tears. "Then we're your family now. If you'll have us, of course." "Of course I will," Alyson said, taking her hand. Later that night, Leo called with news. The police had located another victim of Serrano's ring, a woman named Lucia in another state. She had been institutionalized for less time, and they were hopeful for a full recovery. Months turned into a year. The women Alyson had saved were not just recovering, they were thriving. Olga, though still quiet, had rediscovered her passion for sewing and was selling her work online. Eliana, full of a new fire for justice, enrolled in online law school. And Lucia opened her own hair salon, vowing to hire other women who had survived trauma. One warm evening, Alyson walked through a park and saw a young couple sitting on a bench, holding hands and laughing. They looked happy, carefree. For a moment, she remembered her interrupted wedding. The crushing weight of the deception. She had thought her life was over that day, that she would never trust anyone again. But now she understood. That day hadn't been an ending, it was a beginning. Her phone rang. It was Eliana. "Guess what?" Eliana's voice was bright with excitement. "I'm dating someone. We met at a victim support group. He's kind and honest, and he knows everything. How do you feel about it? Alyson asked, smiling. At first I was scared, but now I'm not afraid anymore. After everything I've been through, I've learned how to tell the difference between the truth and a lie. After hanging up, Alyson looked up at the sky, a gentle smile on her face. The women she had helped were rebuilding their lives, stronger and more resilient than before. And so was she. She didn't need a ring, a dress, or a ceremony to feel whole. Because in that moment, she was finally, truly free. If you were captivated by this story of strength and retribution, be sure to subscribe to Velvet Vendetta.